One of the initial questions that we asked on the survey was the importance of Plan Bay Area. So this was asked at the front end. What we did was we provided a brief description of Plan Bay Area. We explained to respondents that it's a long-term strategy for the entire Bay Area, and it's focused on improving the local economy, reducing driving and greenhouse gases, and providing access to housing and transportation. We asked, based on this initial information that we're giving you, how important do you think this type of a plan, regional plan, is? Overwhelmingly, 87% said that this type of regional plan is important. So 87% in the total. You had only 5% who said that this type of a plan is not important. Okay. So looking at that same question, the importance, we also looked at it by county. So this chart is showing those results by county. If you look at the top bar, the blue bars there are the total again, and that's all respondents, where you have 66% giving it a 5 and 21% giving it a 4. So that's the 87% of all respondents. But what was interesting was if you looked at it across county, there was a high level of folks who thought it was important across county. So everywhere from 84%, which was in Santa Clara County, saying that it was very important or somewhat important, all the way up to 95% in Napa. So pretty consistent among the different counties. We also saw that relatively high level of importance among other demographics. We also looked at likely voters. Here again, there was a relative consistency with people saying they thought it was important. Which statement do you agree with more? There should be a regional plan guiding housing and commercial development in the Bay Area. Or B, local cities and counties on their own should plan housing and commercial development in their area. Residents are quite split on this particular issue. You can see from the chart, 51% local cities and counties should plan, 44% regional plan, with the rest as mixed opinions. This particular question and this particular issue tends to be one of the most divisive that we asked about on the entire poll. So not only do you see a split here as you look at this chart, but as we looked at different subgroups, when we looked at different geographic classifications, when you looked at it by county, by some of the different demographics, likely voters, ages, we saw a lot of swings in terms of where people fell, whether they fell for local or whether they fell for regional. Most of the other questions on the questionnaire, we did not see that. We saw a lot of consistency with those different subgroups falling similar to the way that the totals fell. So this issue in particular, a lot of big differences. Jumping back to the regional versus local question, this shows a breakout of how those different area types broke on that question, as well as the different counties. So if you look at it by area type, you can see that areas in the rural areas tended to be much more favorable towards local for this development, commercial development. So 61% of the rural folks. Urban and suburban, they still fall towards local in terms of favoring local, but it's a lot tighter. There's not as big a difference. Looking at urban, for example, you have 48% favoring local and 46% regional, so relatively tight there. Looking at by county, big swings there. So you look at the counties that are overwhelmingly for local: Napa County, Marin County, Sonoma County in particular. The top three are all favoring local for this particular issue. Looking at the bottom of that table, San Francisco was the only county that favored a regional plan for development. Alameda County was evenly split, 47% and 47%.
I'm sorry. I am very much opposed to Plan Bay Area because I believe the process was flawed and the public workshops we attended were a masquerade. It appeared you had your own agenda which ignored the will of the people. You enrolled, so to speak, unsuspecting people with talk of lofty goals. Of course, everyone wants good transportation, homes, clean air and water, open space, etc. I feel you do not have the foggiest idea if your vision is even doable. I think I'm wasting my breath, but I ask that before you bankrupt us and ruin our quality of life, will you please put your plan on the ballot as an advisory vote? There would be an honest pamphlet with pro and con information so people can know what is really going on. My husband and I are representing our family who could not be here today because they must work to pay taxes and raise families. They believe your vision is as more distribution of wealth. Since we do not approve of wasting hard-earned dollars on a socialistic vision, MTC and ABAG do not speak for us at this time. Thank you.
It is not surprising the consensus turns out to be, after all, 85%, since the issues, questions, and assertions about the plan and its outcome were fraudulent and were predetermined. Like, this public outreach is fraudulent. Nobody knows what's going on except the people who are here and you. And we understand something quite different, the people, than what you are understanding. Thank you.
I am a home builder. I live in Santa Clara County. I've been building houses since 1960. I think we get into a lot of trouble with the word affordable. That, you know, when I buy lumber from the lumber company, it doesn't know whether it's going into a $3 million house in Los Altos Hills or it's going into a $150,000 house in Alviso. Everyone, when they think affordable, they think that this means that I can afford it. That isn't what it means at all. We really should use the word subsidized, because when I build projects along transportation corridors and in high density, that's the most valuable land in the Bay Area. So my land costs are extremely high. It's not the cost of lumber, it's not the cost of paint, it's the cost of the land. And so when you use the word affordable, I think you're doing the people a great disservice, because they think, oh, that's me. I'm going to be able to afford it. That's not what you mean at all. You mean that you're going to have housing that's subsidized. And so I think that we would be able to solve a lot of problems by using the word subsidized housing rather than affordable housing. Thank you.
First of all, there was a lot of data presented here earlier today. It looks pretty impressive, but you know, my experience attending these visioning meetings is, wow, I didn't get asked those questions. The handouts in these meetings was like 5 questions, 1 to 5, no real chances of providing real input. So there's a real disconnect from me, an average citizen who attended one of these meetings, expecting to have real input, to what I saw here today. So I don't know what's going on, but that didn't reflect what I saw, and it didn't reflect what I sensed from the other people that attended the meetings. One other point is, in a previous presentation, someone mentioned about fear of Sacramento and the federal government, and it was kind of mentioned and kind of a little bit like maybe that's kind of a, wow, I can't believe people are worried about that. That's true. The federal government controls the dollars. Sacramento writes the laws. We're here today because Sacramento and AB 32 and SB 375, they're controlling us. They're going to control our communities, our local communities, through the dollars. If we don't comply with these plans, we don't get the dollars that we pay taxes to Sacramento, we pay the taxes to the federal government, but we don't get that money back unless we play the game. Final thing I want to say, to the people of the year 2050, and this plan gets implemented and we're dealing with the consequences, I want at least those people to know that some people spoke out, some people oppose this, and I definitely oppose this plan.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And there was one that was particularly interesting. We had 8 people at the table, and in position 1 to my left was a woman who was assigned to attend from the State Housing Commission in Sacramento, and she was voting. Position 2 and 3 were employees of MTC, and they were voting. Position 4, this woman conducts One Bay Area meetings in other states. They're called something else. They're not called One Bay Area. And she was voting. Position 5 was a close friend to the 2 MTC women, and she was voting. Position 6 and 7 were citizens. That meeting was troublesome in many ways. Not the least was when I asked a question and I was told to imagine the scenario and then vote on it. In answer to others' questions, they were told if they had a problem not to vote at all. As you can see, at best, this survey process is flawed and compromised. And at worst, it touches on being fraudulent.
Hi, I'm Doug Buchwald, Director of Berkeleyans for Better Transportation Options. We led the successful fight to stop the misguided bus rapid transit project in the city of Berkeley, strongly supported by MTC and ABAG, so do not doubt that you can't fight back. You can fight back. I have some questions for all of you here, and you can respond by raising your hand. How many of you were elected to do this job? Raise your hand. Elected as an ABAG representative or MTC. Raise your hands.
To do this? Yeah.
Nobody. Nobody. Do you have the right to interrupt me? I think the chair ought to ask you not to do that. Thank you.
Doug, direct your questions.
The timer can add time back on for that interruption. Thank you. Okay, now, how long do you think you would stay in your current elected job if you declared you were going to hold all public meetings at 9 a.m. on a weekday from now on? Raise your hand. How many of you think you would, how do you think you would hold your job? No. Why can you do it here? Because you are not accountable directly to anybody. You should not be making decisions for 7 million plus people in this Bay Area if you're not accountable to anybody. That's actually, it ought to be illegal. Now, your role basically is as a middleman between the funding agencies in the state and the federal government and the cities that need the funds. You use that power to bribe cities to do what you want them to do. That is unethical, immoral, and inappropriate, and that ought to be illegal. Corte Madera in Marin County just pulled out of ABAG. They decided we've had it, we've had enough. Apparently they think we're Corte Madera and we no longer fear ya. We're Corte Madera and we no longer fear ya.
Wrap up right now.
So I say if they can just say no to ABAG, by gosh, other cities should start thinking of that option too. Just say no to MTC and ABAG. Thank you.
Rob?
I think you're all idiots for thinking that you're going to try to box us up, because we are Americans and we will fight back.
I'm Charles Cagnan. I'm from San Francisco. I attended 2 of the visioning meetings and one in the DOT hearing that was held here a few weeks ago. My background is an early environmentalist and a corporate responsibility guy, and I actually worked in telecommunications as a planner and a strategist, so I'm familiar with large-scale infrastructure planning. And I think that the problem with this, I attended these meetings and I agree with the criticisms that everybody else had about the sort of the whitewash quality of the meetings. I think the real problem with this, from my perspective as a planner, is that really this thing has sort of been focused around platitudes. So you've been surveying some platitudes that say, if you do this, we're going to have a great economy, and everybody sort of says, yeah, we want a great economy. And so it feels like that the process is basically sort of a bait and switch with a blank check. And that there's a bunch of bureaucrats that are going to have a 25-year budget of $250 billion, and they're never going to have to work again for the rest of their lives. And then we're going to be, subjected to all these kind of people with clipboards. But I think that the real thing about a normal planning process is that it's a diagnostic. You start out with a statement of problems. You start with a statement of needs and wants, and those are specific. We discovered that in the surveys that there is no such thing as one Bay Area. There's many Bay Areas, there's many regions, they all have their own specific problems, and really what the planning process should do is start from the region, find out where the areas of transit congestion are, find out where the areas of growth are, find out where the areas of natural beauty are that we want to preserve, and start from the local area and say, this is really what we need to solve our problems, to make our lives more efficient. And if you basically make your life more efficient, you don't really need this ideology about transit first and that kind of thing, because what people want to do is they want to live their lives to meet their needs in an efficient way. And so the bottoms-up diagnostic needs to happen.
I represent about 7 million people that have not probably heard about this visioning program. Your meetings are held when the voters, the taxpayers, and the property owners are working. Are you hiding out?
I've attended both rounds of the Planned Bay Area workshops. They should have been run according to the Brown Act, because you are supposedly representatives of the citizens. I filed a complaint with the Contra Costa DA Mark Peterson and copied State General Kamala Harris because of this. I think they should be run according to the state's Brown Act. This building and all its employees are a huge, expensive bureaucracy paid for by a dwindling supply of taxpayer dollars. I contend that if you were to just get rid of this building, if it were just to vaporize, things would probably get along a lot better in this state. Of course, you have metro government agencies all over the United States. They were put in according to UN Agenda 21. I know you don't like that word. It's on the internet. In order to separate the citizens from the ability to have an input into how you're going to plan where we live, how we get around, how you spend our taxpayer dollars, how our federal tax dollars are spent. I've seen many people protesting this plan. I don't want a bureaucracy planning how I can live, how I can get around, and where my child can work. Thank heavens I'm retired, and maybe I'll be dead by all this is implemented, thank God. Why don't you give more area for people to sit down? You represent many counties. I don't know, what is it, 5 to 10 counties here? Here's all this open space. You love open space. Why don't you move back and allow more people to come in here and sit down? I know you don't care what we say, because the last time I came here you threatened if I didn't quiet down and the rest of the people that nobody would be here to listen to us. You should care what we think. And I think the reason you don't care is because you're not elected, you're appointed, just like all bureaucrats are appointed. And I totally am against this plan for my life, and I'm totally against Plan Bay Area. Thank you.
I clearly pointed out and identified the multiple frauds that are involved in your plan at every level. At every level. The plan, the cornerstones of your plan are based on fraud. I will just, quoting from your own literature, melting glaciers are predicted to cause sea level rise, which may flood much of the transportation infrastructure in low-lying areas of the region, including San Francisco and Oakland international airports. These are your words. This is your document. I also see that this is supposedly mandated by Senate Bill 375. Well, as a matter of fact, UN Agenda 21 and the related chain of evidence go back to 1992. This was around long before Steinberg, as was the sustainable community. And if you want to deny everything from this Agenda 21, the vocabulary, the planning, the process is cookie cutter. And we see it here today. We see it in about 15 other US cities. The same vocabulary, the expression, the notions, the unelected officials, unelected bureaucrats running the program. If you want to deny that this is not the basis of your plan, I think you're living in la-la land. And the problem is none of you are elected. You sit there and I wrote to Mr. Goodwin, gave him the evidence. I sent him the C-SPAN video from 1992. I sent him documents. I sent him tax returns. Did I get a response? No. Will we get a response from you? I wonder.
Thank you, Richard.
Your 5 Bay Area plan scenarios that call for a 175% redistribution of income will harm the poor the most. The survey was rigged. It gave us no choice to publicly say what we thought about the choices.
Speakers that were talking about it, since they came from all over the Bay Area, talking about the conservation area set aside. I think that generally speaking, I'm in favor of that type of an approach, and I do think that would be received fairly well around the table.